7 stories turned the MMA world completely upside down this past week, and most of them circle back to one man, Dana White. The UFC boss trashed his own main event, got into a public war of words with Jon Jones, and watched Joe Rogan call out his gambling habits on air. On top of all that, Conor McGregor's anti-doping ban expired today. Dustin Poirier dropped a bombshell about Islam Makhachev's fight night weight, and Ronda Rousey announced a comeback that doubles as a challenge to the entire UFC machine. Let's get into it.
There's so much happening in the fight world. Like, it's actually incredible what's going on in the fight world. It's a great time to be a fight fan.
UFC 326 went down on March 7th at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, and what happened after the fight turned out to be bigger than the fight itself. Charles Oliveira walked in and absolutely smothered Max Holloway across 5 rounds to claim the BMF title by unanimous decision, with all 3 scorecards reading 50-45. That is as clean a shutout as you will ever see in a championship fight. Over 20 minutes and 49 seconds of mat control out of a 25-minute fight tells the whole story. Oliveira secured takedowns in every single round, outstruck Holloway during the rare moments they stood, and nearly locked in a rear naked choke in the final frame that looked like it was over. Holloway, being Holloway, smiled at the camera and threw up a thumbs up while being choked, and the crowd in Las Vegas lost their minds for that moment.
Rise smile from Holloway! Make it through this round and realize a second.
The rest of the fight, though, drew a very different reaction. Fans in the arena straight up booed during the championship rounds because they paid to see a BMF brawl and instead got a grappling masterclass.
And the crowd's booing a little bit, but because this is beautiful grappling by DuBron.
Rogan, on commentary, turned on the crowd live on the broadcast and called them casuals. That alone would have been enough of a story. But then, this past week on JRE MMA Show, episode 176, Rogan sat down with Dustin Poirier and revealed something that changed the whole conversation. Rogan explained that he had been sending Dana clips of high-level Muay Thai and kickboxing from one championship, trying to pitch him on that style of action, and Dana told him flat out that he didn't enjoy the Holloway-Oliveira fight. White's exact words, according to Rogan, were that the BMF fight wasn't that good. Rogan disagreed, Poirier disagreed, and then Rogan admitted he labeled his own daughter a casual because she sided with Dana on it. Consistency like that is hard to argue with. Oliveira fired back at critics this week too, saying that when professional fighters call it a bad fight, that's jealousy talking. Dominating a fighter like Max Holloway for 5 rounds, in his words, should have earned respect, not complaints about the style. His question to the doubters was simple: tell me the game plan for the next fight because he's open to suggestions. And the man has earned the right to say that. Oliveira now holds the distinction of being the 4th BMF title holder in UFC history and the first fighter to hold both that belt and the undisputed lightweight title. 2 more wins would give him the all-time UFC record for victories, currently held by Jim Miller at 27. Records for most finishes, most submissions at 17, and most post-fight bonuses already belong to him. None of that controversy is really about Oliveira's performance though. What it exposes is the growing tension between what Dana White wants the UFC to look like and what his fighters actually do inside the cage, and that tension is showing up everywhere right now. That same tension between White and his roster brings us to Jon Jones, and this situation has somehow gotten even messier. For a quick recap, Jones wanted a spot on the White House card. Dana refused and called him retired. Jones insisted he was actively negotiating, and when Dana announced the Freedom 250 lineup on March 7th during the UFC 326 broadcast, Jones was nowhere on it. 2 days later, on March 9th, Jones posted a statement on X that shook the entire sport. Every claim Dana made publicly, Jones disputed. His team had been negotiating with the UFC right up until the announcement, according to his post, and the line that cut deepest was this one: "If I had accepted the lowball offer, suddenly my hip would be fine." The statement ended with a request that nobody saw coming. "If the UFC truly feels like I'm done, then I respectfully ask to be released from my contract today." a 28-1 fighter, a former 2-time light heavyweight champion and former heavyweight champion, publicly asking to be let go from the biggest MMA promotion on earth. And that's when Joe Rogan entered the picture again. Reports from BJPenn.com this past week indicate that Rogan has been helping Jones behind the scenes, pushing back against White's narrative that Bones was never seriously in consideration for the card. Rogan had already gone on record calling the omission a travesty, referring to the biggest card in UFC history being built without the sport's greatest fighter. What makes this notable is that Rogan isn't just defending Jones in isolation. The UFC's top commentator has been on a full collision course with its CEO on multiple fronts, and the most bizarre example of that dropped just days ago. About a week ago, Rogan hosted Yellowstone star Luke Grimes on the podcast, and the conversation drifted to Dana White's slap fighting promotion in a way that nobody expected. Rogan, who has always been diplomatic about his longtime friend's side projects, went after Power Slap directly this time. Calling those bouts fights, in Rogan's view, is insulting to actual combat. Grimes echoed the sentiment, saying it's tough to watch because, in his words, it's just people getting brain damage over and over again. And then came the moment that broke the internet. Rogan floated his personal theory about why Power Slap exists in the first place, and his explanation was that he believes the entire promotion funds Dana White's gambling habit. Those were his actual words on the biggest podcast on the planet. Rogan backed it up with a story about sitting next to Dana at a blackjack table, watching him go $600,000 into the hole, and then clawing the whole thing back plus a $100,000 profit in one session. The framing was half joke, half accusation, but the fact that Rogan felt comfortable airing it publicly tells you exactly where these two stand right now. Defending Jon Jones, disagreeing with Dana on the BMF fight, questioning Power Slap, and backing fighter pay reform, all at the same time. The relationship between the UFC's biggest voice behind the microphone and the man who signs everyone's checks is being tested harder than at any point in the promotion's history, and none of it feels like a coincidence. Staying on the JRE train, because that same podcast episode with Dustin Poirier delivered one of the most explosive claims MMA has heard all year. Poirier turned the conversation to his UFC 302 title fight against Islam Makhachev from June 2024, the one he lost by 5th round submission, and what he revealed about the size difference between them sent the MMA world into a multi-day argument. According to Poirier, a visit to UFC executive Hunter Campbell's office gave him access to internal fight night weight records that the promotion doesn't make public. Campbell's numbers showed Makhachev at somewhere around 190 to 192 pounds on the night of their fight, while both men had weighed in at the 155-pound lightweight limit. Poirier weighed 176 pounds in the cage that evening, meaning the gap between them was roughly 16 pounds. The way Poirier painted the pictures stuck with people.
I know, I looked across under those spotlights and they had veins in his shoulders and shit. I'm like, fuck, this guy's huge.
Standing across the cage under the spotlights, seeing veins popping out of Makhachev's shoulders and thinking to himself, this guy is huge. That image captured why this story hit so hard. Makhachev responded on Telegram within hours, writing that he has never weighed more than 80 kilograms, which converts to 176 pounds, ever. What complicates the whole thing is that publicly available data from California, which discloses fight night weights, showed Makhachev at 178 pounds for his UFC 311 title, about 7 months after the Poirier fight. That number supports his denial. At the same time, Makhachev himself admitted that cutting to 155 had become increasingly difficult, vacated the lightweight belt, moved to welterweight, and dominated Jack Della Maddalena at UFC 322 to become a 2-division champion. The man was clearly enormous for a lightweight, and whether he was truly 192 against Poirier is a question nobody can answer definitively because most states don't release that data. Poirier also described the Bravo choke that ended their fight as unlike anything he had ever experienced. Makhachev's grip, once locked in, created what Poirier called an immediate blood shutdown, with no gradual fade, just instant darkness. darkness. This conversation feeds directly into the larger debate about weight cutting in MMA and whether the UFC should be forced to publish fight night weights across every jurisdiction. Right now, the system is a patchwork, and as long as it stays that way, these kinds of allegations are going to keep surfacing. Every clash between Dana White and his biggest names this month traces back to one thing: money, and what's building right now could reshape the sport entirely. May 16th is the date. Ronda Rousey returns to fight Gina Carano at the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles on what will be the first MMA event ever broadcast on Netflix, promoted by Jake Paul's Most Valuable Promotions. The fight is sanctioned under the unified rules of MMA, with 5 5-minute rounds, 4-ounce gloves, and a real professional cage. This is not an exhibition. Rousey is 39 years old and last competed in 2016. Carano, who just revealed at the press conference that she married Muay Thai fighter Kevin Ross, is 43 and hasn't fought since 2009. Dismissing this as a nostalgia card would miss what Rousey is actually doing, because she's treating this fight as a direct assault on the UFC's grip over the sport. Her words at the March 10th press conference were blunt. This is the biggest fight in MMA right now. There are no two people in this sport with more international name recognition than me and Gina, except Conor, but no one is going to sanction that. Rousey has been hammering the UFC on fighter pay, and Rogan has been backing her up. On a recent episode, Rogan argued that Rousey's position, combined with Netflix's financial power, could force real change across the entire sport, especially if more fighters become free agents and more promotions start competing for their services. The card itself keeps getting stronger. Francis Ngannou returns to the cage against Felipe Lins. Nate Diaz faces Mike Perry. Jason Jackson, the former Bellator welterweight champion, was just added against Lorenz Larkin as of this week. Every single one of those names walked away from the UFC, and that's where the fighter pay context makes all of this land harder. Earlier this year, Zuffa Boxing, which is Dana White's boxing venture, signed Conor Benn to a one-fight deal reportedly worth $15 million. One fight, $15 million. UFC fighters immediately called that out, asking why a boxer earns that kind of money on his first fight under the umbrella when veteran MMA fighters never see anything close. Tom Aspinall, the reigning UFC heavyweight champion, signed with Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Talent Agency on March 6th and reportedly expects to out-earn his UFC fight purse through commercial deals alone. When your heavyweight champion partners with your biggest boxing rival because the money outside the octagon beats the money inside it, that sends a message nobody can ignore. Under the new $7.7 billion Paramount deal, bonuses jump to $100,000 per award starting in January, but fighters have historically received between 16 and 22% of the UFC's total revenue, while athletes in most major sports leagues take home between 47 and 50%. That gap sits at the center of everything unfolding right now. Speaking of money and comebacks, today, March 20th, 2026, for those of you watching on release day, marks the official end of Conor McGregor's 18-month anti-doping suspension. 3 missed biological sample collections within 12 months during 2024 triggered the ban, and McGregor has not stepped inside the octagon since July 2021, when a broken leg ended his trilogy fight against Dustin Poirier at UFC 264. Nearly 5 years without a fight, a record of 22-6, aged 37, and somehow the most tested UFC athlete of 2026, having already provided 3 anti-doping samples this year alone. A meeting with Dana White and UFC officials took place earlier this month, according to Ariel Helwani. The original plan, based on McGregor's own account from a Smashcast interview, was for him to fight Michael Chandler at the White House, but the UFC changed direction and booked Chandler against Mauricio Ruffi on that card instead.
So, as I was aware, it was the White House. I was up for the White House. I know the administration was strong for me to be in the White House. It was McGregor versus Chandler. The story was built in.
McGregor confirmed the UFC kept offering different opponents and different dates, but no contract ever materialized. The vibes he described pointed toward fighting whoever won the BMF title at UFC 326, and after Oliveira took that belt, McGregor posted on X, "If they want, I'll spank Charlie." A separate post declared he'd accept a no-name opponent and told the UFC to send the contract. Helwani's reporting puts the most likely return date at International Fight Week on July 11th, with Nate Diaz for a trilogy fight and Max Holloway as the two leading opponent options. Either matchup would be enormous. The real question hanging over all of this is whether McGregor even wants to come back to the UFC given everything we've just covered. Rousey building a separate empire on Netflix, Aspinall signing with Eddie Hearn, Jones requesting his release, the entire fighter pay debate reaching a boiling point. McGregor has never accepted less than he believes he's worth, and right now, every week brings new evidence that fighters can find bigger money elsewhere. Time to bring all of this together with what's on the calendar. UFC Freedom 250 lands on June 14th on the South Lawn of the White House in Washington, D.C., with an estimated production cost of $60 million. The event is not expected to turn a profit. Between 3,000 and 4,000 people will attend on complimentary tickets, with another 85,000 watching on large screens at the Ellipse, nearby for free. Weigh-ins are planned for the Lincoln Memorial. Paramount Plus and CBS will simulcast, and because the White House grounds are federal property, the DC Combat Sports Commission won't regulate the event, meaning the UFC will self-regulate. Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje for the undisputed lightweight title headlines the card. Alex Pereira, moving up to heavyweight to face Cyril Gane for the interim belt, sits in the co-main event slot, and a Pereira win would make him the first 3-division champion in UFC history. On the other end of that fight is Tom Aspinall, still recovering from the double eye surgery that followed Gane's pokes at UFC 321, telling Ariel Helwani that he's improving fast and aims to fight before the end of the year.
You obviously thought it was going to be Jon Jones, and now Gan's got that fight. Do you feel like he's almost been rewarded a bit for what's happened, or?
I mean, who else is going to fight though? The division's on its ass. So there's not many big fights to make, is there? So got to do what they got to do. Right, just took in the information. Cyril Gane, Alex Pereira. Obviously, I'm going to fight the winner of that. So. Just waiting now to be given the green light, the all clear from the doctors to start training properly again. As soon as we can start training properly again, full contact in the gym, we will be getting a fight date booked to fight the winner. So just waiting for the clearance to be medically cleared now, and then we go.
So it's a case of you guys contacting the UFC and just giving them...
Exactly, as soon as the doctor clears me, we'll let the UFC know. And we'll be looking to book a fight as soon as possible.
Before any of that though, UFC London fills the O2 Arena this Saturday, March 21st. Undefeated Movsar Evloev at 19 and 0 faces Lerone Murphy in a featherweight main event with a title shot against Alexander Volkanovski, almost certainly on the line for the winner. Evloev nearly missed the fight entirely due to visa issues just days ago. Then on May 9th, Khamzat Chimaev takes on Sean Strickland for the middleweight belt at UFC 328 in Newark. And 1 week later, Rousey vs. Carano on Netflix. The craziest 3-month stretch in MMA history is about to start. The sport is printing money, the cards keep getting bigger, and the fractures between the UFC and its biggest stars, Rogan, Jones, McGregor, Aspinall, Rousey, are widening by the day.
There's so much happening in the fight world. Like, it's actually incredible what's going on in the fight world. It's a great time to be a fight fan.
Dana White runs a $7.7 billion machine that's planning the most ambitious event in combat sports history on the lawn of the White House. And at the exact same time, his top commentator calls his side projects insulting, his greatest fighter asks for a contract release, his heavyweight champion signs with a rival's talent agency, and a former champion is building an entirely separate MMA promotion on Netflix with Jake Paul. The UFC isn't struggling. The money has never been bigger, but the control is slipping. And 2026 is the year that will tell us whether fighters finally have enough power to change the way this whole thing works. See you in the next one.